So we're going to wrap up this semester today, and this particular lesson that we're going to be looking at today is very significant because oftentimes I think that there are presuppositions that are deeply formed over long periods of time by what we hear, pick up, listen to, think about, and so forth. And those presuppositions actually affect the way we actually hear and process information. And so when you're listening to something, you listen through the grid of the emotions that are connected to kind of your overall worldview or presuppositions, and that changes things significantly based on kind of where you're coming from. And so as a communicator, I hear that all the time. I'll be talking about some idea or issue, and somebody will come back to me, and they've got a completely different definition or take on the terms that I'm using and have a very different perspective on what just got said. And so when it comes to life, who you are as a person, how life actually works, we've been talking about and tackling an issue the last couple of weeks on the very nature of humanity. If you believe that people are basically born good, people intrinsically are unselfish, humble, interested in others coming out of the womb, that their goal is always to seek truth, not to seek themselves, if their goal is always to look out for their fellow man, not simply to look out for their own gratification. If you've been raised to believe and you've come to the conclusion that humanity is basically good, you will have a take on life that's very different than someone who believes that people who basically come out of the womb, they're born with a selfish, self-centered focus, that they'll take advantage, cut corners, avoid truth to be able to get their way. If that's your view, you'll have a very different view on how life works. And you'll have a very different perspective on what society is leaning toward, what society is doing. So this is a very significant issue for you to wrestle with. What is my basic presupposition? What's my basic presupposition? Now, intrinsic evidence would indicate that people don't come out of the womb basically benevolent. How many of you had to teach your children how to lie? I didn't steal the cookie out of the cookie jar, Mommy. Crumbs dripping off your mouth. Like, how many of you had to teach your child how to say, no, it's mine? See what I'm saying? But in addition to that, historically, society's also recognized that bad things come from inside of people, and therefore part of the goal of society is to help people deal with those kinds of things. So today we're going to look at the last of our wounds, and this is the lack of an overall masculine vision of life that permeates not just individuals, but a society in general. And what's the result of a society where masculinity is not clearly laid out with a vision? So we're going to start off with two models. There are two models, or two life visions that everybody has. And those models, I laid them out. People are basically good. That results in a victimization model. That is currently the prevailing model in the United States and in Western Europe, this victimization model based on the idea that people are basically born good and that society messes us up. Society messes us up. So the other model is that people are born basically bad. And when I say bad, basically what we mean by that is it's all about me. Life revolves around me, and I will do what is necessary to make it work for me, regardless of what happens to you. That's the other model. So let's walk through this, because I want you to see the result of this kind of thinking. So we start off with every child being born into the kind of nurture that is harmful. Okay, so we're not saying society is good either. So children are born into a world where mom and dad, flawed people, make mistakes in parenting. So there's no such thing as perfect parents. In addition to that, we talked about the wounds. There's the absence of fathers. That affects children, whether they're physically absent or emotionally absent, or there's something there through divorce, through abuse, overly bonded to mother, lack of men and mentors, no real direction for children. Kids are brought into a world with imperfect people doing imperfect things, and the result of that is there are wrongs committed against children from a very early age. No perfect people, wrongs committed against children, and those wrongs create hurts. Now, in the victimization model, what we would say is that a child who is basically innocent by nature, they're born good. They come into the world with nothing but love and benevolence for other people, and every impulse of their heart is good. That child then, innocent by nature, kids are basically good. That child is hurt by society, by parents, by bullies at school, by various things that happen. They're hurt, and woundedness results in that child. So the idealization of a child that's perfect and so forth is now getting kind of beat down by society, and that woundedness results in the child. So in this model, the innocent child begins to respond wrongly because of the hurt in their life, but really other people are to blame. Other people are to blame. I'm starting to respond incorrectly. So because I'm bullied at school, I begin to bully the people that are smaller than me. But it's not really my fault. The only reason why I'm doing this is because it's been done to me. And so therefore, I'm really good inside. I'm just doing bad things because of what everybody's done to me. The innocent child then grows up and becomes a victimized adult and continues to blame others. So now the innocent child who's been wounded has started acting out on that woundedness, grows up as an adult, continues to act out on that woundedness. Now as an adult is a perpetuator of that woundedness to other people. Other people now experience the pain and the problems that child is now as an adult bringing into the world. But it's not really my fault. It's not really my fault. And you'll hear things like this. Well, honey, I know I raise my voice when I get angry, but you should have heard my father. Like, you're lucky that all I do is raise my voice, because my dad used to hit my mom when he got angry. And I grew up with that, and it was so painful for me. I just can't help myself. When I get angry, I just raise my voice. It's not my fault. It's my dad's fault. It's not my fault. And so she lives with a perpetuation of a problem, but the person who's actually perpetuating the problem is not at fault, because I'm a victim of what happened to me. I was basically good until somebody did something bad to me, and now, because I act out of that doesn't make me bad. And it's just like, this is what happened. I mean, honey, I know I have a difficult time making decisions. But, you got to understand, like, I didn't have a man in my life growing up. Nobody taught me how to do this. And so, like, my mom did this for me, and I married you to do this for me. Like, I'm disappointed. Why are you not taking care of me? Because this is what happened for me. This is what makes me feel good. And so therefore, this is the way it ought to be, right? This is how it ought to work. My insecurities. People treated me, they teased me, they mocked me when I was a kid. It created insecurity. So this exterior of pride that I walk around with, like untouchable, well, you can't expect me to be different, because this is what happened to me. It's not my fault. In this particular model, the victimization model, society now affirms him as a victim and says, really, it isn't you. It isn't you. Here's the problem with this model. The problem with this model is this person is now stuck. You're stuck because you're basically good, so it's not your fault. All the bad that you do is somebody else's fault. So how do you fix this? There's no solution to this. Not only is this person stuck, but society is stuck because this adult now is perpetuating bad behavior, causing harmful nurture on the next generation of people. And they then are going to be victims, and they're going to eventually act out on it. And so basically we have bad society, not bad people. And so that basic view led the philosopher, psychologist, and education expert B.F. Skinner to really begin to try to build a model for social engineering, which is prevalent in Western civilization, predominantly in our education system. That if we can engineer the way people think, we can engineer the way people talk, we can engineer the way people act, then somehow we will fix this problem of society, and those who are basically good will be good. That's why political correctness feels like a restriction of freedom. In fact, his classic book was entitled Beyond Freedom and Dignity. Think about that. The dignity of an individual who has been granted the personhood and the intelligence to choose and make decisions for themselves. We need to move beyond that. Freedom, a society where the free exchange of ideas takes place. We need to move beyond that. He actually wrote a book where he described his utopia. It was called Walden 2. I had to read it in high school. All about an engineered society where everybody was taught what you could say, what you can't say, what you can think, what you can't think, who can feel what words are dangerous words, what roles everybody has to fit in, because if we can just engineer society. Anybody feel like we're actually talking about 2015? We can just engineer society, we'll fix this problem. Because humans do not have the ability to own their crap. It's not our fault. Somebody else did it to us. That's the victimization model. That's the current prevailing view of the world. Let's talk about the second view, and this is the salvation model based on the life vision that people are basically selfish, self-centered, they're broken inside, they're evil. That comes from their mother's womb. In many ways, the model is the same, but the presupposition underneath it is different. So we start off again with harmful nurture. It should be harmful nurture. I've got nature on here for some reason. That might be confusing to you. Harmful nurture. Everybody grows up in a world where people don't do well by them, and that creates wrongs, which creates hurts in the individual. The child is also partially responsible for that, not for what people do to them, but for how they respond to it, because inside they're depraved by nature. The same woundedness results, and the same result comes when a depraved child mixes the woundedness from this environment with his own depravity and uses his woundedness as a cover for his own evil behavior. In other words, honey, when I yell at you when I get mad, I'm going to say that it's because of my dad. But I am not willing to admit that I have the freedom to do something different. And I'm choosing to continue to perpetuate this cycle because my selfishness, my pride, all of those things which are negative in me get in the way. They come to the surface. That's why Paul says in Romans 5:12, therefore, as by one man sin entered the world, it's Adam, sin entered the world, and death through sin. And so death passed to all men. And then Paul concludes the verse by saying, because all have sinned. The sins of nurture come from Adam. The sins of nature are part of what we participate in too. So we're not sitting here blaming the past. It's all his fault. We're saying what he did, I do. What's been done to me, I do to others. Their motivations that hurt me are my motivations that are now hurting other people. So the depraved child becomes an evil man, and condition hurts both himself and others. At that moment, there's two approaches again. You can blame other people. It's not my fault, it's other people's fault. And society will affirm you in that blame, leading to despair. What do I do about this? When I was in graduate school, I had a family. I was in Dallas and had a family that lived in North Dallas. Beautiful house, very successful business owner. They had me come and stay at their house when they went out of town. So I would house sit for money. Graduate school, I needed money to get through, so I would house sit for money. And one of the days I asked the wife, I said, I don't understand. I mean, I love doing this. You know, coming, living in your house, eating your food, you know, getting paid to do that. I love this, but why don't you have your 19-year-old son who lives here keep an eye on things while you're gone? She said, oh, Tim, it's really hard. We've had such a difficult time with our son. You know, he's supposed to be in college, but he won't live in the dorms. He skips class a bunch. He's very irresponsible. He won't do chores. And we just frankly don't trust him to feed the dog and lock the doors and take care of the place. And I'm thinking to myself, well, I know why he doesn't want to live in a dorm, because in your 2-story house, he's got the whole upstairs to himself. Like this beautiful, huge home with a media center and all. Like, he's got this. Why would you live in the dorm sleeping, 5 feet away from some other guy that's snoring in a dorm room for 2? And like, I know why you don't get a job and work, because there are 5 cars, from Cadillacs to SUVs to 2-seater sports cars, sitting out in the driveway that he can drive anytime he wants to. Like, why would he do anything? Why would he do anything? And she said to me, this was what got me. She said to me, I guess he's right. When he tells me that we've gotten him used to a standard of living that he could never pull off on his own, and so we've actually ruined him. And so don't expect him to try to get out there and make it, because, listen, he can't live up to what my expectations are. I guess he's probably right. And I said, well, can I give you a little bit of advice? She said, well, I guess so. It couldn't hurt. I said, well, here's what I would suggest. Change the locks on the door. Change your locks. Think if he sleeps on the front porch for a couple days, that dorm room bed will feel really good. And take away all the keys to all the vehicles. I think if he walks to the bus stop to get around, after a few days, he'll start realizing, well, maybe getting a job to actually earn a little bit of money to be able to eventually purchase transportation, that will change things quite a bit for him. In her mind, she bought his stuff that he was getting all through school, through his college professors, through society in general. It's not my fault. This is what you did to me, Mom and Dad. It's your fault. You owe me this. And she bought that. Blames others. The second point of view is that if you understand and believe that you are responsible, that actually there's evil inside of you. There's a selfishness that is inside of you that perpetuates this. Other people did it to you, yes, out of their selfishness. You were hurt by that, but you continue the cycle by your own choices. What you realize at that point in time is that you accept yourself as broken and you need help. Jesus told this incredible story about 2 sons in Luke chapter 15. We know the story mostly is the story of the prodigal son. The one son, the younger son, comes to his dad, says, listen, Dad, I'm not going to wait for you to die off. I want my money now. So breaks up the family family plot. Dad sells everything, gives the son his money. The son goes off and he lives this wild lifestyle until the money runs out. And once the money runs out, he tries to find work and he can't find work, and he ends up in a place where he's reached rock bottom. He's actually feeding the pigs and he doesn't have enough to eat, so he's eating the pig food to survive. And Jesus said there was a moment when he came to himself, when he realized, what am I doing? I got myself into this mess and I cannot get myself out. The moment he came to himself, he asked the question, who is the one that can help me? And the only person that could help him was his Father. Return to the Father. And what was so strange is the Father, who had done nothing but treat him with love and perfection, rather than holding him in contempt and scorning him and mocking him and saying, son, I am not going to help you. In fact, in the ancient world, it would have been common for the son to sit outside the gate of the house of the father for 4 days before the dad would even agree to see him, so he would be publicly shamed in front of the whole town for what he had done. But what the story says, as Jesus tells it, is the father saw him coming from a long way off, and he ran to meet him. The most shameful thing for a man in the ancient world who was respected was to hike up his garment and run. But out of his extravagant love, the father ran to meet his son and threw his arms around him and welcomed him back in. What Jesus was saying is essentially that's the way God views us. At the moment in time when we realize, like, I'm a sinful man. There's been a lot of bad things that have happened to me, but I'm participating in this. I'm part of the problem, and I can blame others, and I can claim victimization, and I can put it off. But at the end of the day, when I come to the place where I recognize that I am broken, who can help me? And men, we decide it's time to run to the Father, to go back to him. What you find out is God himself, who loves you deeply, has gone to incredible lengths to forgive you of your sin, to begin to heal you, to empower you to live out your masculinity and your life in him. That's what God has done. In fact, God has gone so far that he actually sacrificed his own son, Jesus, who came to live among us, was crucified to take the punishment for our sin upon himself so that God could grant us righteousness as a free gift. We call that grace. We didn't deserve it. But Jesus took the punishment for us and gave us grace. The good news of this is that we can be forgiven. We can be restored to the Father. We can experience the power of his Holy Spirit that will live in us and begin to change us day by day by day by day. The greatest moment in your life is when you finally come to yourself and realize, I need something greater than me. I got to quit blaming other people. I've got to own responsibility and admit that I'm broken, because at the point you admit you're broken, you're ready to be fixed. You're ready to be healed. You're ready to be restored. If you've never placed your trust in Jesus Christ as the one who paid for your sin, you've never come back to the Father, can't think of a better time to do it than right now in this moment. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you guys to bow your heads. I want to lead you in a simple prayer. And if today you would say, I want that, I want to come back to my Father, I want to be forgiven and restored to God, I'll give you a sample prayer, and you can pray it to yourself in your own words, pray it to God, and here's how it goes. Father, I know I'm a sinner. I know that I have done things that are evil and selfish and against you. Father, I know that I deserve to be separated from you. Father, I believe that you love me. I believe that Jesus died to pay for my sins. Lord Jesus, come into my life. Forgive me. Take charge of me. Lead me. Father in heaven, I'm so grateful that everyone who calls upon your name, you hear their prayer. Everyone who asks, you pardon. Everyone who in faith seeks you, you find them. Father, for the men in this room right now who have given their life to you, starting this journey today with you, Father, fill them with hope and courage, because this is the best day of their life. And it's just going to get better from here as they walk in your power. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. If you put your trust in Jesus Christ this morning, I would challenge you before you leave here to tell another man. Tell your small group leader, tell me, tell Nate. We'd love to get you started on this journey. It's an incredible journey. For some of you, you may have taken your eyes off of Jesus and gone back to this victimization model. My prayer for you today is that you would get back on track with God, because with God, you're going to see a transformation in you. Without him, on your own, in yourself, you won't see that take place. So that's the two models. So what we're challenged with is this idea of vision, like what we see, what we believe, what we're shooting for makes all the difference in the world. I want to unpack this vision idea from Scripture with you as we take the rest of our time today. So I want you to look at a couple verses that are really significant. The first one is in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. Proverbs 29:18. Proverbs 29:18, famous proverb, we read these words. He says, where there is no revelation, some of your translations may have the word vision there. Where there is no revelation or vision, the people cast off restraints. That word, to cast off restraints, literally means to get out of control, to run wild, to get loose. It's a word that talks about like a wantonness, useless, excessiveness. People cast off restraints. Now, it says where there is no revelation or vision. In other words, in places where people don't have a word from God or a transcendent cause or something to follow that is outside of them, greater than their own personal desires. Remember, we've said this several times in here, that if your vision of masculinity does not extend beyond the borders of yourself, in time you will become a very small person. So the vision is something greater than you, bigger than you, from outside of you. In the absence of that, people go wild. They do bizarre things. They cast off restraints. Let me give you a small example of that. A guy was at the mall a couple of years ago interviewing people at Christmas time on their shopping habits. And so people were there bustling around buying their stuff. And as he was interviewing these people, he would ask this question of everybody that he interviewed: do you have a Christmas budget? 60% said no. He said, so, you guys just come and buy? Oh, yeah, that's what we do. Like, the kids want this, mom wants that, dad wants this. We're out here trying to find these things and buy these things. 60% had no vision for how they would spend their money. As he interviewed those 60%, here was the common theme. Yeah, we don't really know how much we spend at Christmas time. The credit card bills start coming in January, and then we're all like, whoa, and a lot of times it takes the rest of the year to pay off Christmas, and then we do it all over again. What's the issue there? Where there is no vision, no revelation, no outside guide. In this case, it would be your family financial budget. What do people do? They go wild. They cast off restraints. And then they live with the consequences of that. I want to show you an example of this from Scripture. So if you'll turn all the way back to the book of Exodus, second book in the Bible. In Exodus chapter 32, what we see here in this chapter is God has led the nation of Israel out of Egypt by doing these 10 miraculous plagues. They come to Mount Sinai. There God makes his appearance to them. God speaks to them from the mountain. The people are afraid. So Moses goes up on the mountain, and he's gone for a long time while God is giving him the law. Down below in the valley, the people are scared. There is no Moses. There is no leader. There is no vision, so they turn to his brother Aaron, the priest, and they say, give us the gods of Egypt. We need something that we can worship. And so Aaron says, yeah, bring all your gold. They melt it down. They make a golden calf. They begin to worship it. And watch what it says, starting in verse 6. It says in verse 6, so the next day the people rose early and sacrificed burnt offerings and presented fellowship offerings. Afterwards they sat down to eat and drink and got up to indulge in revelry. That phrase, got up to indulge in revelry, is kind of the biblical euphemistic terminology for they had an orgy. That's what the original Hebrew means, which was not uncommon in pagan worship. You would eat, you would get drunk, and you would have a sexual orgy as part of your religious worship. That's the way many of the pagan religions and pagan temples stayed in business in the ancient world. Okay? So, he says that, verse 7, then the Lord said to Moses, go down because your people whom you brought up out of Egypt have become corrupt. They have been quick to turn away from what I commanded them and have made themselves an idol cast in the shape of a calf. They bow down to it and sacrifice to it and have said, these are your gods, O Israel, who brought you up out of Egypt. And so God tells Moses he's going to destroy the people, and Moses begs for their life. Let's jump ahead to verse 25. So Moses is coming down the mountain, and Moses, it says in verse 25, Moses saw that the people were running wild. That phrase, running wild, is the same Hebrew word as cast off restraint in Proverbs chapter 29, verse 18. In other words, the leader is gone, the vision for what they were supposed to be, a holy people, a nation that was traveling to the promised land, receiving God's law, that went out of the picture. And when that went out of the picture, what happened? The people resorted to self-indulgent, wild behavior. So what happens in a nation, or in a family, or in a church, where the masculine vision of men stepping up to lead based on the principles of truth, righteousness, goodness, justice, the things that come from God, the principle of relationship and the value of relationship, the principle of commitment, generational blessing, those visions for who we are as men, they disappear. They go out of our radar. We don't no longer hear those messages. We don't see them. There's no men around us that reinforce that. There's no dads teaching that to their sons. What happens? Well, what we have here in letter C is a lack of manhood vision wound, and here's how we define it. A stunted or perverse masculinity that prevails over a culture misdirecting masculine energies into destructive patterns. Eat, drink, have sex, build my empire, build my brand, make my money, find the woman that pleases me. When she's no longer pleasing to me, get rid of her. What about a vision that cohesively holds men together? Incredible things happen. Today is Veterans Day. In a completely secular, very good. Some of you guys have posted some of your pictures in uniform, and you look a lot older than you did back in those days, right? So today's, in a completely secular sense, if the military has anything, it's vision for what a Marine or a Navy man or an Army or an Air Force, what is it that we do? And when teams of men come together around those visions, incredible camaraderie happens. Incredible things get done. Incredible heroism is displayed. Values and principles by people coming together. You see, incredible things happen. But then we come back to civilian life, where the only vision is the vision of, like, how do I get what I want out of life? And what happens there? Things begin to break down. Evidence of masculine anarchy in our culture today. I started bringing articles and bringing research for you, but it's just too disturbing to me. We've got the breakdown of gender. Like, how stupid is that? It's just stupid. Like, how could the people that run the institutions of higher education and the cultural thinkers in our world think that there's no difference between men and women? It's just stupid. The breakdown of marriage. Like the institution of marriage. You guys realize that the United Nations Council on Human Rights voted 27-14 to affirm the marriage between a man and a woman as needing to be protected above all things in the world because it is the greatest building block of human society. Children need to be raised with a mother and a father. The United Nations, which we would consider liberal, voted 27-14 to affirm the traditional family structure, while our Supreme Court was voting to break down the traditional family structure. The 14 nations that voted against it, the U.S. and Western Europe. Nations that are fighting for their lives in Africa, who are saying we need our men to marry their women and stay together and raise children because our societies are being destroyed by a lack of that. Places like China and the Soviet Union that decided, because of their communist ideologies decades ago, to remove children from the home and raise them in institutions, which totally and completely destroyed their societies, are saying we need to get back to mom and dad and kids fighting against the West. I mean, it's just unbelievably bizarre. I mean, if you don't even believe the Bible, just scientific stuff like biology. Single parents, delayed parenting. We've got a major population issue going on in the West. We do not have enough children being born to support basically the generations that are dying off. We're really getting close to zero population growth in the United States. And who says that, hey man, listen, why don't you get a mortgage and a marriage and a kid? Every study that we know says that will make you grow. It will help you. You will achieve more in that world than you will on your own. Outside of that, it's gone. It's disappearing quickly. Politically correct. You can't even have a legitimate conversation about the facts anymore, because if you say the wrong words, you are shamed. Your business is shamed. People won't buy from you. That's the world in which we live today. I want to show you something really interesting in the decline of a civilization. In Isaiah, the nation of Israel is reaching its point of major decline. Like it has followed the path of pagan idolatry, and it's reaching its major decline. And I want you to see something very, very interesting warning in reality of what happens to a society in decline. Isaiah chapter 3. I just want to read it to you, throw it out there, and you guys can do whatever you want to with it. But look at what Isaiah says, the judgment on Jerusalem and Judah. He says, see now the Lord Almighty is about to take from Jerusalem and Judah both supply and support. They're going to lose the two things that they need, supply and support. He starts with supply, all supplies of food and all supplies of water. Now what is the support? What are the pillars that hold up society? He's going to take away the hero and warrior, the judge and prophet, the soothsayer and elder, the captain of 50, the man of rank, the counselor, skilled craftsman, and clever enchanter. In other words, the male leadership of society are going to disappear. He says, I will make boys their officials, mere children will govern them. People will oppress each other, man against man, neighbor against neighbor. The young will rise up against the old, the base against the honorable. A man will seize one of his brothers at his father's home and say, you have a cloak, you be our leader. Take charge of this heap of ruins. In that day he will cry out, I have no remedy. I have no food or clothing in my house. Do not make me the leader of people. Jerusalem staggers. Judah is falling. Their words and deeds are against the Lord, defying his glorious presence. The look on their faces testifies against them. They parade their sin like Sodom. They do not hide it. Woe to them. They have brought disaster upon themselves. Tell the righteous it will be well with them, for they will enjoy the fruit of their deeds. Woe to the wicked. Disaster is on them. They will be paid back for what their hands have done. Youths oppress my people. Women rule over them. O my people, your guides lead you astray. They turn you from the path. When the male leadership absents itself because we're following a vision that's not taken us toward a positive society, toward positive families, toward commitment, we're not doing that, society will fall apart. And children will step in and have to take over. And then talk about a mess. So in the church, let me finish this up quickly here. Robert Lewis, the guy who wrote this study, he hosted a seminar, had 400 teens bring their parents to a seminar. The title of the seminar was Morally Empowering Your Teens. When he got all the people in the room, he asked these questions. He said, how many men in this room have taught your son what it means to be a man? Taught your daughters what it means to be a woman? Have you taught them the difference between men and women? Have you taught your sons how to treat a woman? Have you taught your children what is marriage, the roles of the husband and wife in marriage? And as he asked those questions, not one person, now these were church people that came, not one person raised their hand on any of those issues. We'll teach kids how to throw a baseball and how to do well in algebra. But basic things like who they are and what they're called to be, very little communication from parents, even Christian parents. So, the primary substitute for real masculinity today is conventional manhood. So let me give you these contrasts really quickly. Conventional manhood focuses on what a man does. It focuses on what a man does. That's a stunted vision. It can only last during your days of employment. Authentic manhood focuses on what a man is. What a man is. And this question will become more important as you move forward in life. Would you rather be an honest mechanic or a dishonest banker? Maybe I should ask the question differently. Would you rather deal with an honest mechanic or deal with a dishonest banker? Because I'm afraid if you had to pick between the first two, do I want to be an honest mechanic or a dishonest banker? In today's world, most people would say, I want to be the banker. Very different vision. Honest versus dishonest as who I am. What does it mean to be a man? I don't care what I do. My character is what matters. We care more about what our kids are going to do, particularly our sons, to make a living, to get them off our payroll, than we do about who they're going to be. Number two, conventional manhood focuses on a personally gratifying niche. Personally gratifying niche. How can I find a niche in life that will make me happy? Authentic manhood focuses on a personally fulfilling niche. A personally fulfilling niche. How can I accomplish something with my life that is worthwhile, even though it might be hard and not as pleasant along the path? Conventional manhood focuses on competition with other men. How can I beat you out to get ahead? Authentic manhood focuses on community with other men. How can we work together to build a community that matters, that makes a difference? Conventional manhood focuses on temporal power. I succeed by getting what I want, therefore I need to have the power to get what I want. Authentic manhood focuses on transcendent purpose. It's not about my power in this world, but it's about my influence. And I can completely control my influence because I can control who I am. I can control who I am. Conventional manhood focuses on personal rewards. They keep me happy. What are the perks that I need in life from my wife, from my parents, from my job? What are the perks I need to keep me happy? Personal rewards. Authentic manhood focuses on external rewards. How can I advance the agenda of the things that are bigger than me? Conventional manhood focuses on self. That's a life taker. How can I suck the marrow out of this world, out of my opportunities, and out of every other relationship in order to get what I need in life? Versus the authentic focuses on others. I'm a life giver. How can I invest in the people and the world around me so that I enhance it as I go? The goal of the conventional model is success. How can I personally succeed? The goal of authentic manhood is significance. How can I impact the world around me, the relationships around me, the people around me? Now, when we come back next semester, we're going to discover that this authentic manhood is what I was created to be, and it will feed your soul. You will enjoy being a man. You will go to bed at night laying your head on your pillow, having done hard things, and feel so much better than laying your head on your pillow at the end of the day, feeling like I got everything I wanted, and I'm still not happy, or I didn't get what I wanted, and I'm going to pout. We're going to tackle issues like, what is the definition of masculinity? What is the vision for that? What does that look like? We're going to tackle issues like, how do I relate to women? Particularly, how do I relate to and love a wife? How do I raise sons? How do I raise daughters? How do I deal with my work? How do I deal with the stages of my life's journey? How do I deal with my sexuality? What do I do with all of that? And there is in the Bible and in this lesson just teaching basic truth in these areas. So I would encourage you, make a commitment to put Wednesday morning on your agenda for one more semester, come back next semester, and every one of you know somebody that needs to be here. Bring them with you. Okay? 8?